Hi, and welcome to Art with Mrs. Torres. This week we are going to be making a little Halloween cat with a pretty moon in the background, and you'll notice the eyes on this cat are spectacular. I'm going to show you some fun tricks and tips, and this project is in honor of my cat. Her name is Molly. Now, she's not a black cat, but she does have some beautiful eyes, and I bet if we look right now, we might see her trying to get into my art shed. Let's see if she's over there. There she is. You can see she wants to come in and do the art lesson too. So this is going to be super fun. I can't wait to teach you. Let's get ready to make our spooky cat picture. So today we're going to need a couple different items. And before we begin, I want to show you all the things that I use to make my cat picture. The first thing that you're going to want to gather up is a can of some sort, or you can use the lid off of something out of your cupboard, but it needs to be round. You can use a small glass if you want to, and that's what we're going to be using to outline and trace around for our moon. So you're going to need a can. You're going to need a pencil and an eraser. You are going to need a marker, a Sharpie marker. And you're going to need some crayons. The crayons will be for coloring the eyes on the cat. The other item you are going to need is a napkin, and the napkin will be used to wipe your hands as well as rub in the chalk if you are using chalk. Now, chalk pastels are different than oil pastels. They are a little bit more dusty and they blend really nice. If you don't have chalk pastels, you could also do the same effect similar using watercolor. If you don't have watercolor, the other way that you can do this is by taking crayons, peeling the wrapper off of the crayon and rubbing the side of the crayon. And that will give you an effect that's similar, not quite the same, but you'll kind of get the same look by using crayons. So I'm going to put those there to show you. These are your three options for the background, so it's kind of fun. You can decide. If you have chalk, I would go with chalk. If you have watercolor paint and you don't have chalk, you can use the paint. The other item that you can also use is crayons. All right, so that's your background. Now, the last thing is you're going to need a piece of paper, and I would recommend a heavier weight paper like construction paper or watercolor paper. So I'm going to have you pause the video. You're going to go gather up those items, and you're going to meet me back here. There is one thing. If you are going to be painting, you're going to want to fill up a bowl or a cup with some water and get a paintbrush. All right, go ahead and pause the video and meet me back here when you have everything. Welcome back. All right, we are going to use a pencil right now just to kind of start to sketch out our design. And you're going to need your eraser. So the first thing is we're going to create our cat in the lower left corner, saving room on the right side for a tree and some bats and our moon. So to draw our cat, we're going to begin by making a really large circle right down here in the lower corner. So you want to really make sure this is big. That cat is very important. So you want to make sure it's large on your picture. And then when you're making the cat's ears, you want to make sure that you're making these triangles pretty wide at the part that connects to the head. Now, once you've made your two triangles, we're going to split the cat's face right down the middle with a light line, just going right down the middle. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight, doesn't matter. We're going to be covering it all up later. And then we're going to split it again through the middle this way. So I'm going to find the middle, and I'm going to draw another line right through the middle. Now, the reason I'm doing this is going to help me in my placement of the eyes. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to be making kind of a cool football shape for the eye. So I'm going to find the center right here. I'm going to skip a space away from that little dot, starting right here. And the first part of the eye is I'm just going to swoop a rounded kind of leaf shape going up and over like this. It's not a rainbow, it's kind of more of a leaf shape curving this way. Then I'm going to see that space right there. I'm going to match it on this side, make a little dot, and then I'm going to do the same thing, kind of curving like a leaf shape, side of a football. Next, I'm going to match it by copying that same shape coming down, around, and back, and making sure that the eye comes to a point. And then I'm going to match the same shape on this side. So the shape is kind of like a football or an almond shape. Now, cat's pupil is different than our pupils. And before we do that, I do want you to erase that pencil line out of the eye of the cat. It won't matter in the head, but it will matter in the eye. We want those eyes to be nice and bright. So our pupils are round, but in a cat's eye, they're not. They actually have a little bit of a point to them. So I'm going to go kind of close to the corner here. And I'm going to start by making a curved line like this. And then at the top up here, I'm going to kind of make a space. And I'm going to bring this curved line down till it makes a point. So it's almost going to look like a fang, like a tooth. I'm going to match it on this side. So however far up I went from here to here, I'm going to match it on this side. And I'm going to curve this line in. And then I'm going to match it on this side, making sure that they come to a point. So now when we color this all in, this will be covered up. It won't show. Next, we're going to add some shoulders for our cat. So she or he is peeking off the corner. And then we're going to come in and we're going to outline this with our black Sharpie marker. I'm going to take my Sharpie marker, and the first thing I'm going to do is outline my cat around the head and the ears, on the side of the face. We'll worry about whiskers and all the other details later. This is just really quick. And the only reason we're doing this quick, we're going to go back over it later after we do the shading with our chalk pastel. All right, so now we're going to move up to the top of our picture. And this is where we're going to take our can and we're going to set it up at the top of our picture so that there is still some space at the top and some space on the side. So I want to make sure that when I'm placing it up here, that there's a little space of paper up at the top and a little space of paper on the side as well. This is going to be my moon. So we're not actually going to trace around it. We're just going to put some chalk around it, and then we're going to rub it all in with our tissue in a minute. So I don't need my pencil at this point. So I'm going to move that off to the side. What I do want to do is get my chalk out. Now, if you don't have chalk, what you can do is you can draw a very light pencil line around here, and you can paint it with some watercolor, and you can make a background with watercolor. And if you're going to do that, I would wet your paper a little bit and then add a very light wash of this color. I'm going to be using chalk because I have chalk pastels. So the colors are up to you. You've got two choices here for your background colors. I chose a blue and a little bit of purple on this one to make kind of a midnight. But if you wanted to do a sunset sky, you could do that as well. And then this one, I used oranges and yellow chalk. So you have to decide which color scheme you want to do. They're both beautiful. You need to decide which one you want to do. Once you've made a decision, either you're using paint or chalk, but either one, you're going to decide what you want your background to be. So I'm going to be going with the blue and the purple, I think. So I'm going to set my can back up here at the top, making sure that there's a little space around the edges. And then I'm going to choose my first shade of blue. So I've got a couple different shades to choose from. I am going to choose one of the lighter shades, not the really light one, but one of the lighter shades. And when you use chalk, it's very messy. So you definitely don't want to blow with this chalk dust because it'll get everywhere. You're not going to be using a whole lot of this chalk. We're just going to be putting a little bit. So you're going to hold your hand on the can and you're just going to brush it around the side of your can. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit so you can see. So I'm going all the way around my can. I'm just brushing a little bit of chalk. We're going to be rubbing it with a tissue. We don't want it really dark and we don't want to get a bunch of powder all over the paper. So I'm just putting a little bit in and I'm bringing it as close as I can to the can. I'm going to put this color blue back and now I'm going to choose a little bit darker blue in my chalk box. Now I've got a darker blue and you can see I'm still holding my hand on the can so it doesn't move. I'm not going too dark with this color. I'm just putting a little bit. You really don't want to use a lot of chalk. It just gets so messy. I'm going to go and add some purple up here at the very top. I have some purple chalk. I'm going to add a little bit of purple up at the very top of my paper. And when I'm finished, then I'm going to start to blend my colors. So you can use the napkin or a tissue or a paper towel, whatever you have handy, and you're just going to kind of fold it up into a little square or crumple it into a little ball. And this part's really important. You want to put your hands down on the can so it doesn't move. And the first thing you're going to do is just to start to rub your chalk around the can. You want to try to get it right up to the edge of the can and you're pressing down pretty hard on the can so it doesn't shift or move. And then once you get that line around the can rubbed in, then you're just going to take your chalk and start to softly move your tissue in little circles. I'm starting at the top and I'm working my way down the paper. You see, I keep moving my hand in a little circle. And I don't need to add any more chalk. You only need a little bit on your paper. It's okay if it gets on your cat. Okay, if a little bit gets overlapped on the cat. When you're done, you'll see that most of the chalk ends up on your paper towel or your tissue. And then if you have any loose powder anywhere, you want to scoop that up on your tissue because you don't want to get it all over your desk. And you definitely don't want it on your hands. So I'm just kind of rubbing all that loose tissue pieces away and that loose powder away. Now, when I'm finished, you can lift up the can and you'll have a little silhouette where your can was. And once I'm done that, if you decide that you don't have a hard enough line or you want it a little darker, maybe your paper darker, you can always place your can back and you can add more. So let's say you're thinking, oh, I want my sky to be even darker. You can go in and add a little bit of gray or a little bit of black up at the top. And then add another coat of blue over it. You always want to add that blue over it or purple over it. You definitely want to have two different colors at least up at the top. Now, if I go in with my tissue and rub those colors in, my sky is going to be a little darker, a little bit more spooky. You want to bring that color, remember, all the way down. You want it to blend nicely on your paper. I got to get up around here, around my sides. When you're finished, you're going to, once again, remove your can. If there's any leftover chalk inside, don't worry, because most of that moon's going to get covered up by a bat or the tree later. Okay, now let's get ready to start creating our cat face and doing the detail work. So we're going to start with our Sharpie marker. And the first thing we're going to do is retrace the eyes. Now, every time you trace something, I'd like you to go over it twice just to make your lines a little darker. Now that there is chalk dust on your paper, if you have some extra paper towels, I like to lay a paper towel down so that my hand doesn't get a bunch of chalk on the side. So if you have an extra napkin or paper towel, go ahead and lay that down. So once I've traced over my cat, then I'm going to go over here to the side and I'm going to give my cat some whiskers. So right here off the edge of the paper, I'm just going to flick my marker a few times to give my cat some whiskers, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Now, because this is a silhouette, all of the cat is going to be colored in except for the eyes. So I'm going to have you decide now, are you going to be painting this with watercolor or are you going to be using your Sharpie marker? So if you have watercolor and you want to paint it, you can do that. I would not recommend using the chalk pastels in there. It is kind of messy. But if you, let's say you have watercolor. So you can take your watercolor and you're just going to add a little bit of water to the black. That's the only color. Now, as you're adding water to the black, you're going to fill that whole well up with water. And then very softly stir it. You don't want to push your brush down in there. You just want a really thin, watery coat. So the paint makes a really nice, quick coverage. So if you have watercolor, you can paint it. If you don't have watercolor, now I'm always going to keep adding drops of water, by the way, to my paint set to help that black spread a little faster, but you don't want it too thin because you want it to look like a silhouette. Once I'm done painting the whole cat, I will go back in with a second coat so it stays nice and dark. But let's say you don't have paint. Then you could also use your Sharpie marker. So for your Sharpie marker, you can just go in and you're going to hold the marker on an angle like this to get a fat line. So if you hold it straight up and down, you're going to get a sharp point. You can go in and do the details like this little part of the eye by holding it straight up and down. But if you want to cover a big area faster, you can hold the marker on its side and pull the marker across the cat's face like this. So go ahead and fill in your cat right now. You're either going to be using a Sharpie marker or your watercolor. You're not going to color the eyes. You're just going to be coloring the face and that little kind of space right there above the eye. You want to color that in too. And it should look like this. So go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and fill in your cat, and I'll meet you right back here. Okay, if you are done filling in your cat with either the marker or with a paintbrush, then we're going to get ready to create a fun, spooky tree and some fun bats. Now for our tree and our bat, we're going to be using our Sharpie marker for drawing it, but you can also go in and fill it in and paint it later. But we're going to start with our Sharpie marker. So go ahead and get your marker, and if your cat is still drawing, just be careful that you don't rest your hand down on your cat when you're working. You might want to either wait for your cat to dry if you use paint, or you can just kind of hold your hand a little bit more careful. So I'm going to be a little careful as I'm over here on the side of my picture getting ready to draw my spooky tree. So our tree is going to be a little wider at the bottom, and then it's going to get a little bit more narrow up here at the top. So I'm just going to start right at the very bottom of my paper here. I'm just going to start by making the edge of the tree. I'm going to make it kind of wonky. I'm just going to kind of make a little bumpy line that comes up like this and goes off the side of the paper. So a tree has branches, so we're going to make a big curvy branch that comes out here and then twirls around on the end. So let me show you my example. So the first thing is we're going to make a branch that comes up over the cat's ear. Then it's going to kind of get a little bendy. We want it to be a couple bends. And then when we get toward the end, we're just going to curl it around in a swirl. Now we're going to continue doing this a few more times, but before we do that, we have to make this branch a little thicker. Now it's going to be a little thicker here, but it's going to get skinny as it comes farther down. So I'm going to start it by being kind of thick, and then it's going to get a little bit thinner as it comes down and twirls around. So that's branch number one. And then on the sides of that branch, we're going to make another swirl come out. Now you can make it go any way you want. It doesn't have to be what I'm doing. Now this swirly branch has to be thinner toward the end, and here it needs to be about the same thickness as this one. So I want to swirl it around, and it wants to get a little bit skinnier as it comes to the end. So once I'm finished with that, I'm just going to go in and fill the space in with the tip of my marker. Now, each time you draw a new branch, you're just going to take just an extra little minute to kind of fill that space in. So anything that's skinny like this, we can use our marker. And then if you get to a big area that's wide and you have your watercolor paint, you can go back in and fill it in with a watercolor. If you don't, just go ahead and use the marker, but we'll hold our marker on the side just to get a little bit thicker line. All right, so now we've got that branch done. And then I'm going to hold the marker kind of on its side as I fill the space in. And you want it to be kind of solid. Because it's a silhouette. All right, so there's one branch. Now, before we start getting too crazy with all the branches, it's time to figure out where we want to place a little bat. So I'm going to walk you through the steps on how to draw one. And then once we draw one or two bats, then you can add more branches around the bat. So let's start with our first bat, and we're going to make that bat the larger of the two. So we're going to do him over here by the moon. So what I like to do, so I don't get my hand dirty, is I'm going to set my tissue down right here to rest my hand on. So to make my bat, I'm going to be having my bat line right in the moon. So he's actually in front of the moon. So I'm going to start with a circle and fill it in. Then I'm going to make the bat's ears, which just look like horns. I'm going to draw a straight line coming down. And then for the body, I'm just going to wave my pen going out and then back in again, out and then back in again, and then fill the space in. Now to create the bat's wings, I'm going to start right here where his shoulder would be. And I'm going to draw a line that goes up and out. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, up and out. And I'm going to come right underneath that first line right here and make a short little line on both sides. And the bottom of the wing is going to be these points that come down like this. So I'm going to start by making my first curve, and then I'm going to match it on this side. So they kind of look like legs at first. And then I'm going to bring it up and around, and this one's going to come down a little longer, up and around. And then I'm going to go up and around, and this one's going to be shorter, up and around. And we want them to connect and form a point at the end. So as I come out, I might have to pull it out a little farther to make it have a point in it. And then when you're done, you can go ahead and fill that in with your marker. When you're all done filling in your bat's wings, you can find another spot to add a second bat if you would like. And then once we've added another bat, you can go in and add some more branches. So I like to get the bats done first. I'm just going to turn my paper so I can color this part in. I like to use the side of my marker like this. It's so much faster. So I do the small areas with the tip of my marker, and then I just kind of pull my marker to fill in the gaps. All right, so the bat's done. Now I can find, if I want to add another bat, I could do one farther away in the distance. So I would make my circle. This one's going to be a little bit smaller than this one. 2 ears, straight line down, curved body that comes to a point, shoulders that go up and out, up and out. I'm going to make that little line at first that kind of looks like a leg. And then I'm going to make kind of like upside down U's. And then they're going to land in a point at the end. Color it in. When you're finished, I'm going to add some more branches. So chalk is messy. You see my fingers are getting kind of messy. That's why I keep that paper towel to kind of rest my hands on. So we need to fill this space in before we start making more branches. So you're going to have to either fill it in with your marker, or if you used your paint earlier, this is a great place to fill it in with your watercolor black paint. You can do this much quicker with paint than you can if you're using a marker. So if you use watercolor paint, then you can just go right in and fill the space in. And even though you use marker on the branch, they will look fine together. They just blend really well. So you can go ahead and fill in, pause the video if you need to, and fill in the trunk of your tree. And then we're going to come back and we're going to create some branches. So if you need to, you can pause the video And then meet me back here when you're ready to create some branches. Well, I'm ready to create some branches. Are you? So now that we have our bats in the picture, we have one branch. Now we can decide if we want to add some more branches coming off of our tree. I'm just going to be using my marker. I don't know, where is this one going to go? Maybe up and around like this. It's going to be skinny on the end. And then get a little bit wider as it comes back to the tree. And then I'm going to make another twisty one coming off of that one. I could add some up here. And when I'm all finished designing my branches, I'll go back in with my marker and fill it in. So remember, when you're filling it in, you're going to be using your marker like this on its side for the thicker areas. And then you can hold your marker straight up and down for doing the points. So pause the video, go ahead and fill in all of your areas, and then meet me back here. Okay, once you've filled in all of your branches and you're happy with how your tree looks, it's time to decide how to do your cat's eyes. So you are going to decide whether you want to use crayons or whether you want to paint the eyes. I'm going to be using crayons for mine. And I'm going to be making my cat's eyes kind of like a lemon lime color. So I'm going to be using yellow and green. So when I'm looking in my crayon box, I'm finding some dark green, some kind of medium green, and some yellow. So the first thing I'm going to do is color my yellow really bright in the eyes. And I want to be really careful that I'm on the white paper and not coloring on top of the paint. And as I'm coloring, I'm using kind of some firm pressure so my yellow is bright. If you happen to get a little smudge in the yellow, don't worry, because we're going to be adding green over the top of this. So that is okay. Now, once I've colored my yellow, then I'm going to go in and add some green. I'm going to start with my lighter green first. I'm going to put it right around the edge. And then I'm going to go back over the edge and add a little bit of the darker green. So the lighter green doesn't show up as well, but it's a nice blend between the dark green and the yellow. So now I'm going to go in with the dark green and outline. And I also like to put that dark green right next to the cat's pupil. And then I just kind of add just a little bit more dark green around the top. Around the corners right here. Just to make the eyes look a little bit more rounded. So I hope you had fun today making our spooky cat picture. I had fun teaching you how to do this. Never realized that my cat was going to be trying to sneak in on our art lesson today. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it? And I hope you had fun. And if you want to email me a picture of your artwork, I would love to see what you came up with. My email is rtorres@lcusd.net. Send me a picture of you and your cat picture that you painted or drew today. I can't wait to see it. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day.